Now we're going to talk about health checks. Health checks are quite an important thing in Essence, not least because they're one of the things that you can do with the Essence kernel on its own without any other practices. And we talk about Essence being agnostic of practice and method, or independent of what your existing way of working is. You can always bring Essence in, use it to give you a perspective on how you work, and then move on from there. If we're using Kanban, for example, we always start with where we are, and then we make small evolutionary changes. So Essence helps you do that, and it does that through health checks. And we can have health checks at different levels. We can have them at a kind of common ground kernel level. We can have them at a kind of specific practice level. We can have them at principles and values levels, and lots of different ways. So let's look at one or two of the different ways that we can use health checks in Essence. So we can start with just some cards. We've got the physical cards. We can pick them up, we can lay them out on a table, and then we can start moving them around. We can take, for example, one of those alphas, say the team one with its states, and we can lay them out, and we can say, oh, let's move the states that we're in to the left, the states that we're not into the right, where do we want to go next? And we can do all kinds of things with this moving them around and telling us which states we're in, which checklists we have ticked, and which ones we haven't. That starts to give us a really good insight into the health of a team. So, for example, if we have a team that is right in the middle of delivery, so they've done lots of work, you would expect their requirements to all be really well articulated and coherent. You'd expect the stakeholders to be fully involved. You'd expect the opportunity to be clear and for it to be very obvious what the value is and for there to be measures around that. If I play a game with these cards and I realize that lots of the checklists from earlier stages, earlier states have not been ticked, that's telling me something about the quality of that team's work. They're probably shortcutting stuff. They're not being rigorous. They're maybe not checking that their stakeholders are happy to be involved. Maybe they're not sure on the value. They've maybe not quantified it. And we can start to get some really good insights into where the team is weak, but also where they're strong. So where it's really obvious that checklists are true, that's a sign that the team is really on top of things. So we can do that with the physical cards. We can also do that in a digital tool like TeamSpace. And there's an example of TeamSpace where we can show you how this game works, how you could start with no knowledge of a team, don't care which practices they're even using or if they're using them at all, and play this game. And you can see it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that there's a darker green line on the left and there's pale green on the right. The dark green is what has been achieved. So as you tick a checkbox, that green line starts to build up. So what that gives you is quite a visual perspective on where a team is. And then we can look at a practice view or a practice outcome view. So this is a set of different goals with different teams are achieving. So we can start to see, and even just for looking at that, you can see the team in the middle with the yellow, the top rather, they're further ahead than the team at the bottom. With these green ones, these are all to do with the customer things. The team at the top has got a lot more patchy ticks in their states compared to the team in the middle. So that tells me something about the relative quality of those teams. So these are telling me comparatively how teams are going. And if those are specific goals, I can start to compare how different goals are being achieved compared to the other goals. And then I can look at how teams learn. So this is a game where we've got each one of those tokens is something a team ought to be good at. And we can see based on that 1 to 5, which I strongly agree at 5 that I'm good at this, to strongly disagree at 1 that I'm good at this, we can start to see where a team wants to focus. So of those 20 or so tokens, I don't need to look at all of them and try to find ways to improve all of them. I probably want to start with those ones down at the 1. There's a whole range of other ways we can check health. There's some very practice specific things which are about for this given practice. Are we doing all the things well? And then there's things around specific activities. We can health check an activity. So for example, the first activity in psychological safety is around setting the stage, and there's a health check around seeing whether you've even got the conditions, the environment to be able to set the stage right. There's no point in trying to run that activity before you've got some basics in place, and you can use a health check to test whether you've got those basics there. So there's a whole raft of different kinds of ways of checking health, and they're really important in essence because if you remember back to the overview, we talked about the complexity of the world that we live in just now and how unlikely it is nowadays that a team has exactly the same need for given practices or set of practices at the beginning of a project to the end or between different projects. So it's likely that our optimum mix of practices is going to change and evolve as our world changes and evolves around us, and our problem and our solution and our team members change and evolve. Health checks are one of the ways that you can spot those changes happening, and then you can consider what you do about it. So it gives you both the diagnosis of where the challenges and problems might be within your team, but also sometimes the solution. Because if the particular place where you're weak might point to a practice being missing or a practice being unnecessary. So health checks are really important. It's really important that teams retrospect and health check their way of working, not just their work. And these and many other health checks, in essence, are excellent ways to do that.